During the biggest snowstorm of the year, a billionaire offered food to 3 hungry little girls in front of a subway station, and the next morning, a court officer showed up at his mansion with surprising news. New York has always had a peculiar relationship with snow. The city that never sleeps usually just shrugs at the occasional flakes that dust its busy streets. But that January night felt different. Meteorologists had been warning for days about an unprecedented storm, yet even the most seasoned experts were caught off guard by the ferocity with which it hit the city. From the 78th floor of the Morrison Enterprises building, Jack Morrison watched the city's metamorphosis through his floor-to-ceiling window. At 60 years old, he had built one of the largest financial empires in the country, and that view was a constant reminder of his success. But that night, as snowflakes danced through the air like tiny falling stars, not even the tallest skyscrapers seemed a match for the force of nature. "Mr. Morrison?" Margaret's voice, his secretary for 20 years, came through the intercom. There was a note of concern in her usually professional tone. "The last helicopter has just been cancelled. The authorities have declared a state of emergency across the city." Jack adjusted his Italian silk tie, a ritual that had become almost a nervous habit over the years. His reflection in the glass showed a man whose features were lined with experience rather than age. "Thank you, Margaret. You can go home. Use the company car and driver." "But sir," she hesitated, "what about you? The forecasts say the storm is going to get worse in the next few hours." A faint smile appeared on his lips, a rare gesture that few people had ever witnessed. "I survived 3 stock market crashes, 2 global recessions, and more board meetings than I can count. A snowstorm won't defeat me." As he descended in his private elevator, Jack checked the notifications on his smartphone. The headlines rolled in with growing urgency. "Biggest snowstorm in 50 years hits New York. Temperatures plummet to record lows. Mayor declares state of emergency." The lobby of Morrison Enterprises was nearly empty. The Italian marble reflected the soft lights, creating an almost ethereal atmosphere. James Dart, the doorman who had worked in the building longer than Jack himself, stood up from his desk when he saw him approach. "No need, James." Jack stopped him before he could reach the door. "Go home. You must have family waiting." "Are you sure, Mr. Morrison? It's terrible out there. I've never seen anything like it in 40 years of New York." The icy wind hit him like a slap in the face as he pushed through the revolving doors. The temperature had to be well below freezing, and the snow already reached his ankles, soaking his tailored Italian trousers and handmade Oxford shoes. The streets of Manhattan, normally vibrant even at that hour, were unrecognizable. The buildings, covered by an increasingly thick layer of snow, stood like silent sentinels observing the white chaos settling in. The nearest subway station was only 2 blocks away, but the walk felt like an expedition to the North Pole. Jack lowered his head against the biting wind, his thoughts inevitably drifting to the empty mansion waiting for him on the Upper East Side. Since Elizabeth's death, his wife of 15 years ago, the house had turned more into a status symbol than a home. Fortune magazine had called him the Lone Wolf of Wall Street on its latest cover, a lengthy article highlighting his ability to amass fortunes even in the worst crises. It was a title he secretly despised, but could not deny. The lights in the subway station flickered occasionally, creating dancing shadows on the tiled walls. The air was warmer down there, but there was something unsettling about how still the place was. In nearly 40 years in New York, Jack had never seen a station so utterly abandoned. That was when he heard it. A soft sob, barely perceptible beneath the distant roar of the storm. Following the sound, he found, huddled in a corner of the platform, 3 identical little girls. They couldn't have been more than 4 years old, and their thin clothing, clearly inadequate for the weather, was soaked from the melting snow. "Hello?" He approached cautiously, adjusting his voice so as not to frighten them. "Where's your mom?" The 3 lifted their eyes simultaneously, revealing angelic faces framed by brown curls. One of them, clutching a small, unworn teddy bear, answered in a trembling voice, "Mommy said she'd be right back. She promised it would be really quick." "How long has she been gone?" "A long time," answered another of the girls, hugging her own legs. Her thin socks were torn at the knees. "She told us not to leave here." that she was going to buy food and come right back. But she didn't come back, the third girl added, her voice almost a whisper. And it's so cold. Jack looked around, a sense of urgency growing in his chest. The station was completely deserted, and with the snowstorm worsening by the minute, it seemed unlikely anyone else would show up anytime soon. "What are your names?" he asked, crouching down to their level. "I'm Emily," said the one holding the teddy bear, her voice a bit steadier now. "Olivia," murmured the second, her eyes fixed on her soaked shoes. "Ava," completed the third, so softly Jack could barely hear her over the distant sound of the storm. "And your mum." "What's her name?" "Amanda," Emily replied, clutching the teddy bear tighter to her chest. "She said not to worry, that she'd be back in a jiffy." The girl's voice faltered on the last word, and Jack saw tears begin to form in her eyes. The other two also looked about to cry, their small bodies trembling from cold and fear alike. "Do you know where you live? Or your mother's last name?" The girls looked at each other and shook their heads. A distant rumble of thunder echoed through the tunnels, causing them to shrink back even more. The lights flickered again, longer this time, threatening to plunge them into complete darkness. Jack Morrison had built his empire by making tough decisions. He was known for his cool head and pragmatism, but at that moment, looking at those three helpless children, he didn't need to think twice. "Come with me," he extended his hand. "I know a safe place where we can wait for your mom." The girls hesitated, years of warnings about strangers clearly running through their minds, but fear and cold outweighed any lesson in caution. Emily was the first to stand, still clutching her teddy bear. Jack took off his cashmere coat and wrapped it around the three as best he could. The thin fabric of their clothes was icy to the touch. "My house isn't far," he explained as he led them out of the station. "There's hot chocolate, warm blankets, and we can call the police to look for your mum." The snow was now falling even more intensely, transforming Manhattan into a surreal scene of pure white. Jack carried Emily, while Olivia and Ava each clung to one of his legs. After what felt like an eternity, they finally reached the gates of the Morrison mansion. The 5-story Victorian building, usually imposing with its stone facade, looked almost welcoming beneath its snowy mantle. "My goodness," exclaimed Sarah, the housekeeper, when she opened the door. Her eyes widened at the sight of her boss, known for his impeccable composure, covered in snow and accompanied by 3 shivering children. "Prepare the guest room on the 2nd floor," Jack ordered as he entered, "and make hot chocolate. A lot of hot chocolate." The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity in the normally silent Morrison mansion. Sarah arranged hot baths for the girls, dry clothes, some old items of Elizabeth she had kept, and a generous amount of hot chocolate with marshmallows. Jack watched from the doorway as the triplets, now warmed up and fed, fought sleep in one of the mansion's huge guest beds. The room, like the rest of the house, was decorated in an austere luxury that now felt strangely cold and impersonal. "What if Mommy comes back and doesn't find us?" Ava asked drowsily, her eyes already closing. "We'll find her," Jack promised, surprised at the sincerity in his own voice. It wasn't a hollow business promise, but a genuine commitment. When the 3 finally fell asleep, Jack went down to his office. The snowstorm still raged outside, the wind's howl a constant reminder of how isolated they were. The walls around him were lined with awards and photos, documenting his rise in the business world. His gaze fell on an old photograph on the desk, he and Elizabeth, young and smiling, on their honeymoon in Venice. They had talked so much about having children, but the years went by, the business always demanding more and more of his time, and when Elizabeth got sick, the sound of small footsteps pulled him out of his thoughts. Emily stood in the doorway, teddy bear clutched tightly. "I can't sleep," she murmured. "Can I stay here with you?" Jack hesitated for a moment, decades of solitary routine weighing against that simple request. Then, setting his glass aside, he nodded. Emily approached timidly and climbed into his lap. The teddy bear smelled of damp and thyme, probably her constant companion for her short life. "You know," she said after a moment of silence, "Mommy always says that angels appear when we need them most." Jack felt something tighten in his chest. "Your mum sounds like a very wise person." "Are you an angel?" she asked with the innocence only a 4-year-old could have. A sad smile touched Jack's lips. "No, little one. Far from it. Yet as Emily drifted off to sleep in his arms, Jack Morrison, the feared Wall Street billionaire, felt something awaken inside him. Something he had buried with Elizabeth, something money couldn't buy and power couldn't conquer. Sarah found him like that an hour later, still sitting in the armchair with Emily asleep in his arms. She smiled softly. It was the first time in 15 years she had seen her boss look genuinely at peace. Outside, the blizzard of the century was turning New York into a white desert, confining millions to their homes. But inside the Morrison mansion, a man who had dedicated his life to building walls around himself was slowly letting them crumble. What he did not know was that night was only the beginning, and that sometimes the greatest gifts come disguised as the biggest storms. While the snowflakes kept falling relentlessly over the city that never sleeps, fate was weaving its invisible threads, connecting lives in ways no one could predict. Morning arrived quietly and white over New York. The snowstorm had finally eased, leaving the city under a thick blanket of snow that shimmered like diamonds under the pale winter sun. From the window of his mansion office, Jack watched the first signs of life in the streets. Emergency crews clearing blocked roads, brave residents venturing out of their homes. The triplets were still asleep upstairs, exhausted after the traumatic night. Sarah had prepared an elaborate breakfast for when they woke up. Pancakes with maple syrup, fresh fruit, hot chocolate. Everything made with a level of care Jack hadn't seen since Elizabeth's time. "Mr. Morrison," Sarah's voice interrupted his thoughts. "There's a court officer at the door. He says it's urgent." Jack frowned. "A court officer? At this hour, right after the worst snowstorm in decades? Something was off. Show him in, Sarah. And please bring a strong coffee." The man who entered his office looked as tired as Jack felt. Officer Thomas Parker, according to his badge, had deep circles under his eyes, and his clothes were wrinkled as though he'd been awake all night. "Mr. Morrison," he began, accepting the cup of coffee Sarah brought. "Sorry to bother you so early, but we have a serious situation in the city." "Besides the snowstorm?" Parker nodded, taking a sip of coffee. "Overnight, there was a serious accident downtown. One of the older buildings couldn't take the weight of the snow on the roof. The partial collapse caused a chain reaction. Gas pipelines ruptured, explosions. Several buildings were affected, including the Morrison Enterprises building." Jack felt his stomach drop. "How many casualties?" "We're still counting. Dozens injured, some still trapped in the rubble. Rescue teams are having trouble reaching some areas because of the snow." Parker paused, checking his notes. "But that's not the only reason I'm here. We have reports of 3 missing children in the area of the accident. Triplets." Jack's heart began to race. In the privacy of his office, sheltered from the chaos outside, he had nearly forgotten the mystery surrounding the girls sleeping upstairs. "The girls are here," he said, watching the officer's reaction closely. "I found them last night, abandoned in a subway station." Parker straightened in his chair, his fatigue momentarily forgotten. "I need you to tell me exactly how you found them, Mr. Morrison." Jack recounted the previous night's events, how he had discovered the triplets alone on the platform, shivering from the cold, how they said their mother, Amanda, had promised to return quickly but never did. "And you didn't try to contact the authorities?" "With the snowstorm, the lines were overloaded. I tried calling the police several times, but couldn't get through. It seemed wiser to bring them somewhere warm and safe." Parker jotted notes in his notebook, his professional expression masking any reaction. "I see. And the girls didn't mention their mother's last name, or where they lived?" "No. Just that her name is Amanda, and that she went out to buy food." Jack hesitated a moment. "Officer Parker, do you think she might be among the accident victims?" The officer closed his notebook with a heavy sigh. "It's a possibility we have to consider. The accident area coincides with where the girls were found, and we have several unidentified victims in hospitals." At that moment, the sound of little footsteps caught their attention. Emily stood in the office doorway, hugging her ever-present teddy bear. Her green eyes, still sleepy, moved from Jack to the officer. "Good morning, sweetheart," Jack said softly. "Did you sleep well?" Emily nodded shyly but didn't move from the door. There was something in her expression that made Jack's heart tighten, a mix of hope and fear. Did Mommy come back? Her question hung in the air like a heavy cloud. Jack exchanged a quick look with the officer before standing up and walking over to her. Not yet, Emily. But this is Officer Parker. He's here to help us find her. Parker also approached, crouching to her eye level. His voice as when he spoke was gentle. Hi, Emily, are your sisters awake too? As if in response, Olivia and Ava appeared behind Emily. The three Ewoks dressed in pajamas Sarah had found, old gifts Elizabeth had bought, dreaming of the family she never had, looked even smaller and more vulnerable in the morning light. Girls, Jack began, choosing his words carefully, you can help Officer Parker. He needs to know more about your mum so we can find her. The triplets looked at each other, communicating silently in that natural way of theirs. Olivia spoke first. Mommy works in a place with lots of flowers. A flower shop? Parker asked, taking notes. I think so, Ava added. She always comes home smelling like roses. And where is home? The officer continued gently. Near the park, Emily said. There's a man who sells popcorn on the corner. Parker kept asking questions, but the girls' answers were vague, snippets from the memories of 4-year-olds, lacking the precise details that might truly help. Jack watched, feeling a growing frustration. How could a mother simply vanish on a snowy night, leaving 3 young children behind? Mr. Morrison, Parker finally said, standing up, we need to speak in private. Jack asked Sarah to take the girls to have breakfast. Once they were alone again, the officer got straight to the point. We have a problem. Technically, you don't have the legal authority to keep the children here. Are you suggesting I should have left them freezing in that station? No, of course not. Your actions were completely understandable under the circumstances, but now that the storm is over, we need to follow proper procedures. The girls should be in state custody until we locate their mother or other relatives. Jack felt a protective surge he hadn't expected. They've just been through a trauma. Tearing them away from a place where they feel safe will only make things worse. I understand your concern, but Officer Parker, Jack interrupted, using the tone he reserved for important negotiations. I'm a respected citizen with more than enough resources to ensure these children's well-being while we search for their mother. What good would it do to move them to an overcrowded shelter right now? Parker studied Jack for a long moment. Do you have experience with children, Mr. Morrison? The question caught him off guard. No, he admitted, but I have a capable staff, a safe home, and I genuinely care about what happens to these girls. From downstairs came the sound of laughter, the triplets probably discovering Sarah's pancakes. The sound seemed out of place in that normally silent house, but somehow absolutely right. Parker sighed, running a hand over his tired face. Here's what I'll do. Given the exceptional circumstances, this snowstorm, the accident, overburdened emergency services, I can grant an informal temporary guardianship. But we need to find the mother of these girls, Mr. Morrison, and if something happened to her, I know. Jack stood, his mind made up. That's why I'm going personally to the accident site. I need to see it for myself. I wouldn't recommend that, sir. The area is unstable, it's dangerous. It's my building, Officer Parker, and possibly the mother of those children is there, in need of help. Something in Jack's expression must have convinced the officer that arguing was futile. All right, I can arrange an escort for you, since you know the girls and might help identify the mother if we find her. Jack nodded. Sarah, he called, and the housekeeper appeared almost immediately. I need you to look after the girls for a few hours. I'm going out. Of course, sir. But, she hesitated, casting a worried glance toward the kitchen, they keep asking for their mother. I know, Jack grabbed his coat. That's why I have to go. In the kitchen, the triplets were sitting around the old oak table, their feet dangling above the floor. Traces of pancakes and maple syrup decorated their faces, and for a moment, they looked just like normal children at breakfast. Emily, Olivia, Ava, Jack called gently. I have to go out for a few hours. The effect was immediate. 3 pairs of green eyes widened in alarm. No! Emily jumped from her chair, running to hug Jack's legs. Please don't go. You promised to help us find Mommy, Ava cried, tears already sliding down her cheeks. Olivia said nothing, but her lower lip trembled dangerously. Jack crouched down to their level. "That's exactly why I need to leave, to look for your mom. Sarah will stay with you, and I promise I'll be back soon." "That's what Mommy said," Olivia finally spoke, her small voice heavy with fear. "She also promised she'd be right back." The comment hit Jack like a punch to the gut. How to explain to 3-4-year-olds that sometimes promises are broken, that sometimes the people we love disappear? "I know," he said softly, "but I'm different. Look at me." He waited until he had their attention. "I promise, by the memory of my Elizabeth, that I'll come back, and I'll do everything I can to find your mom." The girls exchanged glances again, having one of those silent conversations that felt so natural between them. Finally, Emily released Jack's legs and took a step back. "Here," she said, extending her worn teddy bear, "to protect you." Jack felt his chest tighten. "I can't take it, sweetheart. I know how important he is to you." "That's exactly why," she insisted. "That way, you have to come back to give him back to me." With slightly trembling hands, Jack accepted the teddy bear. The toy, worn by time and love, felt incredibly precious in his grasp. "I'll take good care of him," he promised, tucking the bear inside his coat's inner pocket, "and I'll bring news as soon as I can." When he finally managed to leave, after more hugs and reassurances, Jack found Parker waiting in the foyer. "Impressive," the officer remarked as they walked to the car. "They seem to trust you a lot." Jack touched the spot where Emily's bear rested against his chest. "It's a responsibility I don't intend to betray." As the car navigated streets still partially blocked by snow, Jack couldn't stop thinking about the 3 little girls who, in less than 24 hours, had turned his life upside down. Somewhere out there in the snow-ravaged city, there were answers about Amanda, and he was determined to find them. What Jack didn't know, as he headed to the disaster site, was that some answers are harder to accept than unanswered questions, and that sometimes fate has plans that defy all our expectations. Sarah watched from the window as the car disappeared around the corner. Behind her, 3 pairs of green eyes also watched, small hands pressed against the cold glass. The housekeeper couldn't help noticing how her boss, always so controlled and distant, seemed different that morning. More human, more alive. "He's coming back, isn't he?" Ava asked quietly. Sarah smiled, recalling the man Jack Morrison used to be before loss and loneliness shaped him. "Yes, dear, he always keeps his promises." And as the morning advanced over New York, bringing the first signs of a thaw, the Morrison mansion waited. A house that had for so long been merely an empty shell now pulsed with new life, children's laughter, hope, possibilities. Emily's teddy bear, safe in Jack's pocket, was more than just a toy. It was a talisman, a reminder that sometimes the greatest changes in our lives begin with the simplest gestures. And that family is sometimes what we find when we least expect it. The first sight of the Morrison Enterprises building made Jack stop in his tracks. The building that had been his pride for so many years was now partially destroyed, its imposing facade marked by scars of explosions and collapses. Firefighters and rescue teams moved around the structure like ants, their voices echoing in the frigid morning air. "My God," he murmured, feeling the weight of Emily's teddy bear in his pocket. The toy seemed even more precious now, in the face of such devastation. Officer Parker placed a hand on his shoulder. "The gas explosion caused serious structural damage. We're still assessing the building's stability." Jack barely heard him. His eyes roamed over the scene, cataloging every detail with the precision that had made him one of Wall Street's most successful men. Shattered glass covered the sidewalk like deadly diamonds. The snow, still thick on the ground, was stained with soot and debris. The air carried a pungent smell of smoke and gas. "Mr. Morrison?" a familiar voice called. It was Robert Chen, head of the building's security department. His usually impassive face showed clear signs of exhaustion. "We didn't expect to see you here personally." "Robert, what's the situation?" "Bad. We have at least 30 people still trapped on the upper floors. The east stairwell collapsed, and the elevator—" He pointed to the exposed cables dangling like metallic entrails from the structure. Jack removed his coat, handing it to Parker. Carefully, He took Emily's teddy bear from his pocket and tucked it into his suit's inner lining. "I need to go in." "Mr. Morrison," Parker protested, "this is a job for professionals. It's too dangerous." "They're my employees in there," Jack interrupted. "People who've trusted their lives to me every day for years. I'm not going to stand outside just watching." Something in his voice must have convinced Parker. The officer sighed and signaled one of the firefighters. "Thompson, I need you to equip Mr. Morrison with the necessary safety gear." The next few minutes were a blur of technical instructions and equipment being secured. Jack barely registered the words. His focus was on the voices coming from inside the building, the occasional cries for help. "Remember," Thompson said while adjusting his helmet, "if you hear any sign of structural collapse, get out immediately and keep radio contact." Jack nodded, unconsciously touching where Emily's teddy bear was stowed. "Understood." Inside of the building was a nightmare of twisted concrete and deformed metal. Smoke still lingered in the air, stinging his eyes even through protective goggles. Every step had to be calculated. The floor was covered with debris and, in some places, completely gone. "Over here!" a voice called from what used to be the lobby. "Someone's trapped under a beam." Jack moved toward the voice, crouching to pass under a tangle of electrical wires. Margaret, his secretary, used to complain he spent too much time at the gym for a CEO. Now, as he contorted through tight spaces and climbed over wreckage, he silently thanked his stubbornness about staying fit. The trapped person was one of the night security guards, Johnson, if he remembered correctly. The man was conscious, but a metal beam had fallen across his legs. "Mr. Morrison?" Johnson blinked through the blood running from a cut on his forehead. "What are you doing here?" "Same thing you'd do in my place," Jack replied, positioning himself beside the beam. "Ready, everyone, on 3. It took 4 men to lift the beam enough to pull Johnson free. While paramedics attended to him, he grabbed Jack's sleeve. "There was a woman," he said between groans of pain. "Right before the explosion, she was looking for her daughters. Triplets, she said." Jack's heart pounded. "Where?" "Food court area." She seemed desperate. Jack spoke urgently into his radio. "Parker, we have a possible location on Amanda. Food court." The next hours became a frantic search. The food court was practically destroyed. Marble tables reduced to dust. Huge windows completely shattered. The cold wind blowing through the openings swirled the snow among the rubble, creating little white whirlwinds like dancing ghosts. Every person they found and rescued, Jack asked about Amanda. Some remembered seeing a young woman searching for children, but no one knew where she went afterward. His phone vibrated in his pocket. A message from Sarah. "The girls are fine, Maz, but they're asking about you. Emily wants to know if her bear is protecting you." Jack smiled, despite his exhaustion, answering quickly. "Tell her yes. The bear is doing a great job." "Mr. Morrison," one of the firefighters called. "We've found someone else." It was an elderly woman, an employee of the cafe. She was trapped in a small space between 2 partially collapsed walls, protected by a stainless steel counter that had fallen at a providential angle. Rosa. Jack recognized her. She had served him coffee every morning for over a decade. "We're getting you out." "Mr. Morrison?" She blinked in confusion. "You won't believe it. There was a girl here before the explosion. She was so distraught, looking for her little girls." "Amanda!" Jack moved closer, ignoring the firefighter's warnings about structural stability. "Did you see her? Do you know where she went?" She asked if I'd seen 3 little girls. Said she'd left them waiting and needed to find them. I told her I hadn't seen any children, and she ran off. Rosa coughed, the smoke still irritating her lungs. It was right before everything collapsed. Jack felt his stomach sink. If Amanda was in the building when the explosion happened, his radio crackled. "Mr. Morrison," Parker's voice, "we need you out here. We found something." The something was a woman's purse, partially buried under the debris. Inside, there was a wallet with some singed documents and a photograph. 3 identical little girls smiling at the camera, their angelic faces framed by brown curls. Amanda Martinez, Parker read from the damaged ID, 28 years old. Address on the east side. Jack barely listened. His eyes were fixed on the photograph. It was recent. The girls wore the same clothes they had on when he found them at the station. His heart ached as he thought of them waiting at his mansion, trusting he would bring their mother back. "Keep searching," he ordered, his voice more resolute than he felt. "She has to be here somewhere." The hours dragged on. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the wreckage. Temperatures plummeted again, and the wind started to pick up. Another cold front approaching. His phone vibrated once more. Sarah again. "The girls are getting really anxious. Ava had a nightmare and is asking about their mom. When will you be back?" Jack looked around at the seemingly endless destruction. How would he tell 3 4-year-olds that their mother had disappeared among all this chaos? How do you explain that sometimes people simply vanish, leaving only questions and broken hearts? Emily's teddy bear weighed in his pocket like an anchor, reminding him of his promise. He had sworn he would return, that he would do everything in his power to find Amanda, and Jack Morrison never broke his promises. "1 more hour," he replied to Sarah. "Tell them I'm on my way." As night fell over the devastated city, Jack continued his search. Every unchecked corner could hide Amanda. Every sound could be a cry for help. Every moment that passed was another moment. 3 little girls waited for answers he still couldn't provide. The wind blew harder now, bringing even more snow. The flakes swirled among the wreckage like tiny white ghosts, gradually covering the signs of destruction. Somewhere in that chaos were answers about Amanda Martinez, and Jack was determined to find them. Parker approached, his face grim. "Mr. Morrison, we need to call off the search for today. The structure is too unstable, and with this new cold front—" "I can't stop now," Jack protested. "There are 3 girls waiting, and they need you alive to keep searching tomorrow," Parker gently interrupted. "Besides, we have teams at all the hospitals in the city. If Amanda is out there, we'll find her." Jack knew he was right, but the thought of returning home without answers made his chest ache. How could he look those children in the eye and say he still hadn't found their mother? Removing his protective gear, he touched Emily's teddy bear one last time. The toy, silent witness to a day of fruitless searching, felt heavier now. The drive back to the mansion was quiet. Parker had insisted on accompanying him, probably worried about his state after so many hours of intense search. "You know," the officer said as they were nearing home, "what you did today. Not every billionaire CEO would rush into the rubble for their employees." Jack thought of the people they'd rescued, the stories he'd heard, the faces marked by fear and gratitude. "I only did what anyone would do." "We both know that's not true." Parker paused. "And those girls, they're lucky to have you." The Morrison mansion came into view, its lit windows glowing like beacons in the descending night. Jack could see small silhouettes pressed against the second-floor glass, the triplets, most likely keeping watch for his return. "No," he said softly. "I'm the lucky one for having found them." Climbing the entrance steps, Jack tried to organize his thoughts. How to explain to 3 small children that their mother was still missing. How to maintain hope when every passing hour made the situation look grimmer. The door opened before he could reach the handle. Emily, Olivia, and Ava practically threw themselves at him, their tiny arms wrapping around his legs. "You're back," Emily exclaimed, her bright green eyes brimming with unshed tears. "I promised I'd come back, didn't I?" Jack crouched, hugging all 3 at once. The scent of children's soap and hot chocolate, so different from the smoke and destruction he'd breathed all day, nearly brought him to tears. "Did you find our mom?" Ava asked, her small voice filled with hope. Jack swallowed hard, taking the teddy bear out of his pocket. "Not yet, honey, but I won't give up looking, okay?" He handed the toy back to Emily. "Your friend protected me very well today." The girls looked at each other again, having one of those silent conversations that seemed so natural to them. Finally, Emily stretched the bear toward him again. "Then he needs to keep helping you," she said, with a seriousness that broke his heart. "Until you find Mommy." Jack took the toy with trembling hands, feeling the weight of the children's trust settle on his shoulders. Somewhere out there, buried under rubble or lost in a city battered by snow, Amanda Martinez was waiting. And he would find her even if he had to turn every stone in New York. Sarah appeared in the hallway, relief evident on her face. "Dinner is ready, sir. And I prepared a guest room for Officer Parker too. It's not safe to drive in this weather. Jack nodded, grateful for his housekeeper's foresight, as he climbed the stairs with the triplets, Emily holding his right hand, Olivia his left, and Ava practically glued to his back. He reflected on how his life had changed completely in less than 48 hours. Emily's teddy bear, secure in his pocket, was more than just a toy now. It symbolized trust, hope, and promises that needed to be kept. And tomorrow, when the sun rose over a city still struggling to recover, he would resume the search, because somewhere out there was a mother looking for her daughters, and 3 little girls who needed her back. Outside, the snow began to fall again, covering the signs of devastation with its silent white blanket. But inside the Morrison mansion, 3 small hearts beat with hope, confident that the man who had rescued them from the darkness and cold would not give up until he found their mother. During dinner, Jack observed the triplets trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy. Sarah had prepared spaghetti and meatballs, the girls' apparent favorite dish, or as they'd mentioned during the day, and they ate with an appetite that eased his worry a bit. Even amidst uncertainty, they were just children. "Tomorrow," he said, as Sarah served dessert, "I'll have to leave early again." The 3 immediately stopped eating their chocolate pudding, looking at him apprehensively. "But you'll come back, right?" Olivia asked, her spoon suspended in mid-air. "Always," Jack promised, "and I'll call during the day to check on you." "And the teddy bear?" Emily asked. "Will he go with you again?" Jack pulled the toy from his pocket, placing it on the table. "Only if you let me, sweetheart." Emily studied the bear for a moment, then pushed it toward him. "He liked helping you today." Parker, who had been quiet during the meal, watched their interaction with interest. Later, when the girls were in bed and the 2 men were sharing a drink in the office, he finally commented, "You know, in all my years of service, I've never seen such small kids adapt so quickly to a stranger." Jack swirled the glass in his hands, watching the whiskey catch the firelight. "Maybe they just know they're not alone anymore. Or maybe," Parker suggested, "they see something in you that even you haven't seen yet." Their conversation was interrupted by a soft sound at the door. Ava stood there, her green eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I can't sleep," she murmured. Jack rose immediately, guiding her back to the room. Emily and Olivia were also awake, sitting up in their beds. "Tell us a story," Emily asked. "I'm not very good at storytelling," Jack admitted, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Then tell us about you," Olivia suggested. "What were you like when you were little?" Jack thought for a moment, then began. "When I was about your age, my dad took me to see the snow for the first time." The girls listened intently as he shared memories long locked away. The first snowman he built, snowball fights with friends, the hot chocolate his mom used to make afterward. One by one, they drifted to sleep, their breathing deep and even. Jack stayed for a few more minutes, watching their peaceful faces in the soft glow of the lamp. Tomorrow would be another day of searching, another day of sifting through rubble, checking hospitals, following every lead about Amanda. But for now, in this quiet moment, he could clearly see his life had changed forever on that snowy night. Emily's teddy bear weighed on his pocket like a promise that some stories, no matter how difficult they seem, deserve a happy ending. And while the snow continued to fall outside, Jack Morrison, the lone wolf of Wall Street, made a silent vow to the 3 little souls fate had placed in his path. He would find Amanda Martinez, even if it was the last thing he did. The sun had barely risen when Jack Morrison left the mansion that morning, Emily's teddy bear once again safe in his pocket. The triplets were still asleep, a small miracle achieved only after multiple bedtime stories and promises he would return before dinner. Sarah met him in the hallway with a thermos of coffee and a concerned look he was growing accustomed to. "Did the girls eat breakfast properly yesterday?" he asked as he adjusted his scarf. "Yes, sir, though Ava barely touched her dinner. She seems the most sensitive of the 3. Jack nodded, absorbing the information. In just a few days, he'd begun noticing each triplet's different temperament. Emily, the natural leader, Olivia, the quiet observer, and Ava, the most emotional. As Parker arrived, as if on cue, a police cruiser pulled up in front of the mansion. The officer got out, carrying a thick folder under his arm, Good morning, Mr. Morrison. I have some updates on Amanda Martinez. In the office, Parker spread out documents on the mahogany desk. We've managed to piece together part of her routine. Amanda worked 3 different jobs, a flower shop by day, office cleaning in the late afternoon, and some weekend shifts in a restaurant at night. 3 jobs. Jack felt a pang in his chest. With 3 small daughters to raise on her own, Parker let the statement hang. The apartment she lived in was tiny, in a building condemned by the city. The landlord was illegally renting units to desperate families. Jack stood, walking to the window. The snow had eased, but the sky remained heavy, promising more storms. How did I never notice? Notice what? These people, living like this, working like this, right under my nose. How many of my contracted employees are in the same situation as Amanda? Parker flipped through a few more pages. There's more. Amanda was about to be evicted. The building she lived in is set to be demolished for a new luxury development. Which developer? The officer hesitated. Morrison Developments, sir. Your own real estate subsidiary. The impact of that information hit Jack like a punch to the gut. His own company was indirectly responsible for the precarious situation Amanda and her daughters were in. How many other families were similarly affected by decisions he signed without a second thought? Where are we going today? He asked, struggling to keep his voice steady. Hospitals first. Then I want to check some temporary shelters where the disaster victims have been placed. The first hospital they visited was an organized chaos. Doctors and nurses rushed around, attending to what seemed like an endless influx of patients. Jack and Parker spent hours checking every ward, showing the triplets' photo, and asking about Amanda. I'm sorry, one weary nurse said after consulting her records for the 3rd time. We have a few unidentified patients, but none matching that description. Jack's phone buzzed, a message from Sarah with a photo of the girls at breakfast, shy smiles on their jam-stained faces. They asked if you found Mommy yet, read the text. Not yet, he replied, but tell them I'm not giving up. At the 2nd hospital, they got a lead. One of the burn unit patients recalled seeing Amanda the night of the accident. She was desperate, the woman said, her voice rough from inhaled smoke. She was running around asking about her daughters. I told her I hadn't seen any kids, and she kept searching. Which way did she go? Toward the emergency stairs, I think. Right after that, there was the explosion. Each new account painted a clearer, more heartbreaking picture. Amanda had left the girls in the subway station while she went job hunting, one more job to try and prevent eviction. When she came back and didn't find them, she launched a frantic search around the city, eventually arriving at Morrison Enterprises. Security saw her enter, Parker explained, as they drove to the 3rd hospital. She was clearly distressed, saying her daughters might have come inside seeking shelter from the cold. Jack touched the teddy bear in his pocket, thinking about the twists of fate. If Amanda hadn't left the girls, they might have been in the building during the accident. If he hadn't found them at the station. His phone rang again. Sarah, sounding tense. Sir, I'm sorry to interrupt, but Ava has a fever. It's not high, but she keeps asking for her mother. I'm coming back, Jack said immediately. Call my personal doctor. Ask him to come over. But sir, what about the search? Jack looked at Parker. Can I trust you to continue? The officer nodded. I'll personally check every hospital and shelter in the city, and we have teams at the rubble around the clock. On the way back to the mansion, Jack couldn't stop thinking about Amanda, a single mother, working 3 jobs, fighting to keep her daughters fed and warm. How many Amandas were there in New York? How many families were just one crisis away from disaster? Dr. Stevens was already at the mansion when he arrived. Ava lay in bed, her sisters refusing to leave her side. It's just a virus, the doctor explained. Probably stress-related from the past few days. Keep her warm and hydrated. Monitor the fever. Jack sat on the edge of the bed, gently brushing the damp hair from Ava's face. Hey, sweetheart. How are you feeling? I want Mommy, she murmured, her eyes bright with fever. I know, honey, I know. He looked at Emily and Olivia, who stood by with worried expressions. How about I tell you another story? The 3 settled in to listen, Ava resting against his chest. Emily and Olivia on either side. Jack began narrating tales from his own childhood, moments with his parents, lessons learned. Sarah found them like that an hour later, all four breathing deeply in unison, having fallen asleep. Carefully, she draped a blanket over them. When Jack woke up, it was already evening. His phone showed several missed calls from Parker. "We found a few more witnesses," the officer said when Jack returned the call. "And there's something you need to see. Can I come by early tomorrow?" "As early as possible," Jack replied, looking at the triplets, still asleep. That night, while the city kept struggling to recover, Jack Morrison had an epiphany. Finding Amanda wasn't enough. The system that forced a mother to leave her young daughters alone in search of work needed to change, and he, with all his resources and influence, was in a position to do something about it. In his office, he started jotting down notes, ideas for social programs, plans to revamp his company's policies, affordable housing projects. Emily's teddy bear rested on the desk, a silent witness to his transformation. Sarah found him still working when she brought his breakfast the next day. "The girls are still asleep," she informed. "Ava's fever has gone down." Jack nodded, studying the documents in front of him. "Sarah, how much do we pay the building's contracted employees?" The housekeeper looked surprised by the question. "I'm not sure, sir, but I know many of them have second or third jobs to supplement their income." "Like Amanda," he murmured. "That's going to change. All of it is going to change." The sun rose over New York, reflecting off the remnants of snow. Somewhere out there, Amanda Martinez was still missing, but her story had already triggered a transformation that would affect far more lives than she could ever imagine. Jack picked up Emily's teddy bear, placing it carefully in his pocket. Today would be another day of searching, but also the start of something bigger. A change that began with 3 little girls on a snowy night, and that would continue long after this particular storm had passed. The meeting room on the 50th floor of Morrison Enterprises' temporary offices was packed. Executives, directors, and managers from all divisions crowded around the oval table, many still bearing the dark circles of sleepless nights since the accident. Jack Morrison stood at the head, Emily's teddy bear discreetly tucked into his suit pocket, a talisman he'd grown attached to over the past few days. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice carrying an authority that demanded attention even from the most distracted, "the events of the past week have changed not just our city, but also who we are as a company. And more importantly, who we must be as human beings." A projector displayed images of the devastation caused by the accident and the snowstorm, damaged buildings, displaced families, overwhelmed hospitals. From today on, every division at Morrison Enterprises has a new priority, helping with the rebuilding, not just of structures, but of lives. Not just social programs, but real change in people's day-to-day existence. He paused, his gaze sweeping the room. "And we'll start with our own employees." Over the next 30 minutes, Jack outlined an ambitious plan. The real estate division would convert 3 of its luxury developments into temporary shelters. The legal department would establish an aid fund for affected employees. HR would review all contracts with third-party workers to ensure fair wages and proper benefits. "But sir," one of the financial directors interjected, "this will cost millions. The shareholders." "The shareholders will understand that a company without social conscience has no future," Jack cut him off. "Besides, I'm allocating 30% of my personal shares to fund these initiatives." A buzz rippled through the room. Jack Morrison, the lone wolf of Wall Street, known for his relentless pursuit of profit, was effectively donating a fortune to social causes. "There's something else," he continued once the murmur subsided. "We've discovered that many of our contract employees were living in precarious conditions, juggling multiple jobs just to survive. That ends now." He presented a new wage policy, a workforce housing program, and extended benefits for all workers, regardless of their contractual status. The cost would be astronomical, but Jack no longer cared. Each time he touched the teddy bear in his pocket, he remembered Amanda, a mother forced into impossible choices by a system he had helped create. When the meeting ended, Sarah was waiting in his temporary office with news of the triplets. "Ava's feeling much better today," she reported. "The fever's gone." But they're asking a lot about the search, Jack sighed, loosening his tie. How are they adjusting? Surprisingly well, considering Emily helped bake cookies yesterday, though we still need to get flour off the ceiling. Olivia discovered the library and spends hours flipping through art books, and Ava, Sarah smiled gently. She found some old photos of Mrs. Elizabeth and keeps asking about her. The mention of his late wife made something tighten in Jack's chest. What would Elizabeth say if she could see him now? She had always insisted he had a bigger heart than he let people see. His phone rang. Parker. Mr. Morrison, I need you at the Metropolitan Hospital now. It's urgent. The officer's tone made Jack stand immediately. Have they found her? Possibly. We have a patient matching Amanda's description. She's been in the ICU, unconscious since the accident. The doctors just moved her to a private room. I'm on my way. He turned to Sarah. I need you to stay with the girls a bit longer and get them ready for possible news about their mum. The Metropolitan Hospital was less chaotic than in previous days, but still showed obvious signs of crisis. Jack found Parker on the 3rd floor, standing outside a closed door. She's sedated, the officer explained in a low voice. Suffered severe burns on her right side and inhaled a lot of smoke. Doctors kept her in a medically induced coma until now. Are you sure it's her? Parker nodded. Fingerprints confirmed. It's Amanda Martinez. Jack felt his legs weaken after days of relentless searching, following every possible lead. Finally, the woman in the bed looked both younger and older than her 28 years. Bandages covered part of her face and right arm, and tubes and monitors surrounded her like a technological forest. Yet even through the bandages and pallor, Jack could see the resemblance to the triplets, the same brown curls, the same delicate face shape. Doctors say she was lucky, Parker continued, found in an air pocket formed by fallen beams. A few more minutes of smoke inhalation. I want her transferred to New York Presbyterian, Jack interjected, best burn unit on the East Coast, and I want Dr. Richardson's team. Sir, that will be expensive. Cost doesn't matter. Jack moved closer to the bed, watching the steady rhythm on the heart monitor. She has to live. Those girls need their mother. The next hours were a whirlwind of activity. Jack pulled every string he had, navigating bureaucratic obstacles to ensure Amanda received the best possible care. While specialists were called in and the transfer arranged, he never left her side. I'm sorry, he murmured at one point, alone with her in the room. For all the ways my company, my decisions, made your life harder. But I promise I'll fix this, not just for you and your daughters, but for everyone else struggling like you did. His phone vibrated again, a message from Sarah with pictures of the girls. They had been drawing. 3 small figures holding hands with a larger figure. Red hearts floating around them. Your daughters are extraordinary, he told the unconscious Amanda. So strong, so resilient, they never lost hope for a moment. And now, his voice faltered. Now I need to figure out how to tell them you're alive, but still can't see them yet. How do I explain to 3 4-year-olds that sometimes we have to wait a bit longer, even when what we want most is so close? The transfer to Presbyterian happened in the early evening. Jack oversaw every detail personally, making sure Amanda would have the best room, the best doctors, the best of everything. All her medical costs are covered, he informed the hospital administration. Whatever she needs, Morrison Enterprises will provide. When he finally got back to the mansion, it was past 9. To his surprise, the triplets were still awake, waiting for him in the library. You took forever, Emily said, running to hug his legs as usual. Sorry, little ones. I had a very busy day. Did you find our mum? Ava asked, her big eyes hopeful. Jack knelt, bringing himself to their level. How to explain something this complicated to such young hearts? How to balance hope with reality? Yes, he said softly. We found your mom. 3 pairs of green eyes grew wide in unison. Olivia, always the quiet one, spoke first. Can we see her? Not yet, dears. Mum is hurt. The doctors are taking care of her, helping her get strong again. But it'll take some time. Is she hurt bad? Ava's voice trembled. A little, but the best doctors in the world are caring for her. And as soon as she's feeling a little better, you'll be able to visit. The girls processed this information in silence, having one of their wordless conversations again. Finally, Emily held out her hand. "Where's my bear?" Jack pulled the toy from his pocket, returning it to its owner. Emily inspected it carefully, as if checking for signs of harm. "Did he help you find Mommy?" "He helped a lot," Jack replied with a gentle smile. "He was an excellent partner." Emily hugged the bear for a moment, then offered it back to Jack. "Then he needs to keep helping you, until Mommy is better." Jack felt his eyes sting with unshed tears. The unwavering trust of these children, their capacity for love and hope in difficult moments, continued to astonish him. Sarah found all four of them asleep in the library hours later. Jack in the large armchair, the triplets nestled around him like cubs seeking warmth. Emily's teddy bear rested on the arm of the chair, a silent guardian of that makeshift family. Outside, New York was finally showing the first signs of recovery. Crews worked around the clock on damaged buildings, shelters received a steady flow of donations, and the media had begun reporting on Morrison Enterprises initiatives. "Wall Street's lone wolf shows his heart," read one headline. But inside the Morrison mansion, an even deeper transformation was taking place. A man who had spent his life building walls was learning that some things, love, compassion, family, could not be bought or negotiated. And in a hospital room not far away, a mother fought to return to her daughters, unaware of how her story had sparked a wave of change, affecting thousands of lives. Emily's teddy bear, silent witness to the journey, would continue its watch in the days to come. Because sometimes the greatest miracles begin with the simplest gestures: a borrowed toy, an outstretched hand, a heart that opens to possibilities never considered before. The space between dream and reality is a treacherous place. Amanda Martinez had drifted in and out of that realm many times in recent weeks. Brief moments of near consciousness where she saw her daughters running through a field of flowers or sitting at a table in a home they could never have, wearing uniforms for a school they could never attend. But this time felt different. The pain was too real for a dream, her body too heavy for a hallucination. The first thing she noticed upon emerging from the darkness was the silence. Not the oppressive silence of the subway station where she had left her girls, nor the deafening silence after the explosion, but a hospital silence, punctuated by the rhythmic beeping of heart monitors and the soft hum of air conditioning. The second thing she noticed was the pain, not the devastating agony that had overwhelmed her during the accident, but a controlled, steady ache, mainly on her right side. She tried moving her fingers and was met with a sharp jolt of discomfort, but also the reassuring certainty that she still had control of her body. "Welcome back." The male voice was deep and gentle, carrying a natural authority that seemed to fill the room. Amanda tried to open her eyes, but even the soft light was painful after so long in darkness. When she finally managed to focus, she found herself in a room more befitting a luxury hotel than a hospital. The walls were a calming shade of beige, decorated with abstract art in soothing colors. A large window let in natural light filtered by expensive-looking curtains. The man seated near her bed fit perfectly into the scene of quiet wealth. Tall, with prematurely gray hair, wearing a tailored suit that screamed Wall Street. Something about him felt vaguely familiar, like a face seen repeatedly in newspapers or magazines. "My daughters," she tried to say, but her throat was so dry that the words came out as a rasping whisper. He rose immediately, moving with the fluid grace of someone used to being in charge. He poured water from a crystal pitcher into a matching glass, helping her drink through a straw. "The girls are safe," he said when she finished, his voice carrying a certainty that made something inside her relax for the first time in... how long had it been? "Emily, Olivia, and Ava are all right." Amanda felt tears welling as she heard her daughters' names. How many nights had she repeated those names in fevered dreams, fearing she would never speak them aloud again? "Where?" she began, her voice still weak but steadier. "They're at my home. I'm Jack Morrison. I found your daughters in the subway station during the snowstorm." Morrison. The name hit Amanda like an electric shock, making the heart monitor spike momentarily. Jack Morrison, the billionaire owner of the corporate empire where she cleaned offices a few nights a week. The name on the building that had exploded while she desperately searched for her daughters. "Please," she whispered, a new kind of fear gripping her chest. I have to see them. And you will, Jack assured her, his tone firm but kind. But first, the doctors have to evaluate you properly. You were in a coma for almost 2 weeks. 2 weeks. The thought made her head spin, the monitors again registering her rising anxiety. 2 weeks since that terrible night, since the decision that shattered her heart into a million pieces. Mr. Morrison, she began, her voice shaking as much as her hands. About that night, you don't need to explain now, he interrupted gently. You need to rest, regain your strength. No, please. There was urgency in her voice that made Jack pause. I need someone to know the truth, to know. Before I lose the courage. Jack studied her face for a long moment. The green eyes her daughters had inherited, now shadowed by 2 weeks of nightmares. The naturally olive skin, now pale beneath the bandages. The lips cracked from being bitten, even in her coma. Finally, he nodded, pulling his chair closer to the bed. That night, she began, each word costing her immense effort. I wasn't actually looking for a job. The confession hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. Amanda shut her eyes, unable to face what she was sure would be judgment in the gaze of the man who had saved her daughters. I had decided... Her voice failed, a sob escaping her wounded throat. Oh God, how could I? I had decided to abandon them. Jack felt his heart literally stop for a moment, Emily's teddy bear in his pocket suddenly weighing 1,000 pounds. But years of tough negotiations had taught him to keep his expression neutral, his voice controlled. Why? He asked gently, no hint of reproach in his tone. Everything was falling apart, Amanda continued, the words spilling out like a dam finally collapsing under too much pressure. The eviction came, my third in less than 2 years. My restaurant job ended when they shut down without warning. And the bills, so many bills. Medication for Ava's bronchitis, school materials the daycare demanded, food. She paused, breathing shakily, the monitors reflecting her growing distress. Jack offered more water, giving her time to regroup, absorbing each word with the same intensity he'd devote to a critical business report. I had a family, she continued after a few sips, voice a bit steadier. In Connecticut, wealthy, the kind of wealthy who never talk about money. No children. They saw my girls once on the street, on the way to daycare. They were enchanted. They offered to adopt them, Jack asked, though he already knew the answer. Amanda nodded, more tears streaming down her injured face. All 3. They said they'd never separate sisters, especially triplets. That they could give them everything I couldn't, the best schools, music lessons, travel, a bedroom of their own for each one. You refused. Immediately. Said my daughters weren't for sale, no matter the price. She let out a bitter laugh that turned into a cough. Once she recovered, her voice was hoarser. But they gave me a card. In case you change your mind, they said. In case you realize love isn't always enough. Jack thought of the triplets in his mansion, Emily with her beloved teddy bear, Olivia immersed in the library, Ava peppering everyone with questions about Elizabeth. How must it feel for a mother to know she couldn't provide even the basics for her children? I kept that card in my wallet for months, Amanda continued. Sometimes, on the worst nights when the money didn't stretch to cover both medicine and food, when I had to choose which bill to delay, when I saw other kids with new clothes and toys my girls would never have, I'd take it out and just stare at it, wondering. So that night, Jack prompted gently when she trailed off, lost in memory. That morning I got the final eviction notice. The building is being demolished, ironically, for your company's new development. She glanced at him briefly, noticing how he flinched. I had nowhere to go. My savings were spent on Ava's meds the month before. And then... Her voice gave out completely then, her body shaking with sobs that made her bandaged flesh quiver. Jack waited in silence, his own heart heavy with the weight of her confession. I took them to the station, she finally continued, her voice barely audible. Told them I was going to get food, that I'd be right back. The plan was to leave a letter with that family's contact, or make it seem like something happened to me. Give them a chance at a better life. Jack could picture the scene clearly. The 3 little girls sitting alone in a cold station, waiting for a mother who planned never to return. The thought should have filled him with anger, but all he felt was a deep sadness. "But I couldn't do it," Amanda said, gripping the bed sheets until her knuckles turned white. "I took 10 steps and ran back. What kind of mother abandons her daughters? What kind of monster had I become? But when I got back to the station, they were gone. That's when you started searching everywhere." "Yes, I went to every nearby station, asking everyone I saw. I was in a panic. What if someone bad had taken them? What if they were cold, scared? Someone said they saw 3 little girls entering your building, So you went in looking for them, just as the explosion happened?" Amanda nodded, exhausted from the weight of her confession. The silence that followed was heavy with all the unspoken words, all the impossible choices that led them here. "Do they hate me now?" she finally asked, her voice small as a child's. "They love you," Jack replied with a kindness that surprised even himself. "They ask for you every day. They draw pictures, tell stories about you, never lost hope. How can I look them in the eyes, knowing what I almost did?" Jack pulled Emily's teddy bear from his pocket and placed it on the table beside the bed. The worn, patched toy looked oddly at home in the luxurious hospital room. "Do you know what your daughter said when she lent me this teddy bear?" he asked. "That angels appear when we need them the most." "Mr. Patches," Amanda whispered, recognizing the toy instantly. "Emily hasn't slept without him since she was a baby. It was the last brand new gift I could afford for them. She lent him to me so I could find you. Because, even at her young age, she understands something about second chances that many adults take a lifetime to learn." At that moment, a nurse entered to check Amanda's vitals. She worked with professional efficiency, but her eyes were kind as she adjusted medications and examined bandages. "Your levels look good," she informed. "Dr. Richardson wants to run some additional tests, but it seems you're recovering well." Jack used the interruption to make some necessary calls. First to the doctors, ensuring Amanda would get the best care possible. Then to Sarah, arranging the girl's visit. Finally to Parker, who still oversaw the accident investigation. "How is she?" the officer asked. "Awake, lucid, and complicated, Parker. Very complicated." When he returned to the room, Amanda looked more composed, although her eyes were still red from crying. Mr. Patches rested on her lap, her hand stroking its worn fur absent-mindedly. "Can the girls come today?" she asked, a pleading note in her voice. "Please, I need to see them." Jack hesitated, studying her bandaged face. "Are you sure you're ready? We can wait until tomorrow, give you time." "No," she interrupted with a firmness she hadn't shown before. "I've already waited too long. I need to see them. I need them to know I love them, that I'll never leave them again." The next few hours were a controlled rush of preparations. Doctors ran a final round of tests, ensuring Amanda was strong enough for the visit. Nurses helped her sit more comfortably, arranging pillows to minimize discomfort. Sarah brought clean clothes, simple but nice, so she would look more like herself. "The girls are really excited," Sarah said as she helped Amanda dress. "They barely slept last night after learning you were awake." "How are they really?" Amanda asked, her voice trembling slightly. "These days in Mr. Morrison's house." "They're remarkable children," Sarah answered with a gentle smile. "Strong, smart, and so full of love to give. Emily has been helping in the kitchen, though we're still finding flour on the ceiling after that last cookie session. Olivia discovered the library and spends hours looking at art books. And Ava was always the most sensitive," Amanda finished softly. "She found some old pictures of Mrs. Elizabeth, Mr. Morrison's late wife. She spends a lot of time asking questions about her, about loss, about how people can leave but still live in our hearts." Amanda closed her eyes, more tears falling. "I almost became one of those people. I almost became just a painful memory for them." Sarah finished arranging her hair in silence, allowing Amanda to absorb the weight of her own words. When the triplets finally arrived, the hospital room seemed both too large and too small to contain so many emotions. Emily, Olivia, and Ava paused at the door, their tiny bodies tense with anticipation. "Mommy!" Their triple, synchronized shout broke the spell, and they moved as one toward the bed, only partly held back by Jack and Sarah. "Easy, little ones," Jack cautioned gently but firmly. "Remember what we talked about. Mommy is still hurt, so we have to be extra gentle." Amanda opened her arms, her right one still bandaged, and her daughters approached more slowly, wide eyes fixed on her partially covered face. "Are you hurt?" Ava asked, voice trembling. "A little, my love. But I'm already getting better." Amanda tried to smile, though the movement pulled uncomfortably at the stitches on her face. "Uncle Jack took care of us," Emily informed proudly. "He tells stories and lets us bake cookies with Sarah. And there are lots of books in his house," Olivia added shyly. "Books with beautiful paintings, and Sarah makes hot chocolate just like yours," Ava chimed in, looking happier. Amanda looked at Jack over the girls' heads, tears silently streaming down her cheeks. There was so much in her eyes, gratitude, shame, hope, fear, that he had to look away for a moment. "Thank you," she whispered, "for caring for them, for not giving up on finding me." Jack simply nodded, his own throat tight with emotion. He watched as Amanda hugged her daughters one by one, covering their faces with kisses, promising never to leave them again. The girls, in their blessed innocence, didn't notice the tremor in their mother's voice, the desperation in her embrace. For them, it was simply a joyful reunion after a scary separation. "We brought you something," Emily said after a moment, retrieving Mr. Patches from the table. "He helped Uncle Jack find you." Amanda took the toy with trembling hands. How many nights had she spent mending that bear, trying to keep it intact just as she tried to keep her family together? "He did a great job, didn't he?" "Uh-huh. Now he can stay with you until you get better, so he can protect you like he protected Uncle Jack." Sarah discreetly wiped tears from her own eyes. Even Jack had to turn away briefly, pretending to look out the window to hide his emotion. The visit lasted almost 2 hours. The girls talked non-stop, describing every detail of their days at the Morrison mansion. The cookies they learned to bake, the books they discovered, the stories they heard. Amanda listened with total focus, drinking in every word, every gesture, as though she'd been dying of thirst. When the doctors finally indicated Amanda needed rest, it was hard to convince the triplets to leave. "We'll come back tomorrow," Ava asked, eyes pleading. "Of course, my love. Promise you'll still be here." Olivia's innocent question made Amanda visibly flinch. "I promise, sweetheart, Mommy's never leaving you again." "Never." After Sarah took the girls out, promising milkshakes on the way home, Jack stayed behind. Amanda held Mr. Patches against her chest as though it were a life preserver in a sea of regrets. "How do I fix this?" she asked softly, her voice breaking. "How do I deserve their love after what I almost did?" Jack thought carefully before replying. "You know, I spent years asking myself the same thing after Elizabeth died. How could I deserve her love when work had been more important than being by her side? How could I forgive myself for all the times I said later when she asked for time together?" Amanda looked at him in surprise. It was easy to forget that powerful Jack Morrison also had his own story of regrets. "What did you find out?" "That maybe it's not about deserving love, especially a child's love, isn't something we earn or lose like stocks on the market. It's a gift, and all we can do is try to be worthy of it every day, one decision at a time." They were silent for a moment, each lost in their own thoughts. Outside Juan, the sun was setting, bathing the room in golden light that made the hospital equipment look less intimidating. "What happens now?" Amanda finally asked, her voice small and uncertain. Jack looked at her, young, hurt, but possessing an inner strength he was starting to see, the same strength he saw in her daughters every day. "Now," he said, "you rest and recover. And when you're ready, we'll talk about the future." "What future is there? I have nothing. The apartment, the jobs." "Tomorrow," Jack gently interrupted. "Tomorrow we'll talk about it. Today, just rest knowing your daughters are safe and that they love you." When he left the room, Amanda was already asleep, Mr. Patches clutched in her arms like her own personal lifesaver in a sea of remorse. Parker waited for him in the hallway. "How is she?" "Surviving," Jack answered. "Just like the rest of us. The officer hesitated. About what she said, that she planned to abandon the girls. Some stories are more complex than they first appear, Parker. And some people deserve a second chance to rewrite their ending. Driving back home, Jack reflected on destiny and redemption, how one snowy night had connected lives in ways no Wall Street algorithm could predict, how sometimes you have to lose everything or nearly everything to find what truly matters. For the first time in weeks, Mr. Patches wasn't in his pocket, but Jack still felt the bear's phantom weight. A reminder of promises made and kept, of trust given and honored, of second chances arriving at the most unexpected times. At his mansion, 3 little girls were waiting, probably making plans to visit their mother the next day, their young minds too innocent to fully grasp the events that had almost altered their lives forever. And in a hospital room not far away, a mother slept holding a worn teddy bear, dreaming no longer of abandonment and loss, but of new beginnings and redemption. Tomorrow would bring new revelations and decisions. But for now, in this moment between day and night, it was enough to know that sometimes the greatest miracles begin with the hardest choices, and that redemption, like love, is a gift we need only accept with gratitude and honor with our actions. The morning after Amanda's confession, Jack Morrison arrived at the hospital earlier than usual. He found her awake, still holding Mr. Patches in her arms, gazing out the window with an expression suggesting a sleepless night. "How are you feeling?" he asked, placing his briefcase on the side table. "Honestly, like I woke up from a nightmare only to discover reality can be even scarier." Jack nodded understandingly. He pulled up a chair, keeping a respectful distance. "We need to talk about the future," he began gently. "Yours and the girls." "Not much to talk about, is there?" Amanda replied bitterly. "I lost everything." "Actually," Jack opened his briefcase, "there's a lot to discuss. First, your medical treatment. It's fully covered, including physical therapy and any reconstructive surgeries you might need." "Mr. Morrison, I can't." "Please, call me Jack. And yes, you can. In fact, you must. The accident happened in my building, while you were searching for your daughters. Morrison Enterprises has both a legal and moral responsibility here." He pulled out more documents. "I've also arranged sessions with Dr. Sarah Chen, one of the best psychologists in the city, specializing in trauma and family relations. Therapy. For you and the girls. You've all been through traumatic experiences that need proper attention. The triplets may seem fine now, but events like these leave deep marks." Amanda hugged Mr. Patches more tightly. "How am I supposed to explain everything? About that night?" "You won't have to do it alone. Dr. Chen will help guide that conversation when the time is right. For now, focus on rebuilding trust." Jack organized a few more papers. "There's more. I've secured spots for the girls at Brighton Academy." "The private school?" Amanda's eyes widened. "But the semester already started. The school has a scholarship program, and your daughters are exactly the kind of students they're looking for. And once you're recovered," he slid another document toward her, "there's a position waiting for you at the Morrison Foundation." "Foundation?" "A new initiative. We'll work with families in vulnerable situations, offering comprehensive support, housing, education, jobs, medical care. Your experience will be invaluable." Amanda picked up the document with trembling hands, her eyes scanning the details. The salary was more than she had earned in her 3 previous jobs combined. "Why?" she whispered. "Why are you doing all this?" Jack stood, walking to the window. "Because your daughters taught me something Harvard never did, that success can't be measured by dollars alone. How many other families are going through what you did? How many mothers are forced to choose between medicine and food?" At that moment, Dr. Chen entered, a middle-aged woman with a gentle smile and sharp eyes. "Amanda," Jack introduced them. "This is Dr. Chen. I'll leave you two to talk." The following weeks were intense. As Amanda continued her physical recovery, sessions with Dr. Chen helped her process her guilt. The triplets started therapy as well. Through play and art, they expressed their fears about the traumatic separation. The Morrison Foundation took shape rapidly. The first project was renovating the building where Amanda and the girls had lived, not for demolition, but to convert it into dignified housing for needy families. Each apartment will have 3 bedrooms, Jack explained, with a study area, proper heating, a laundry room, and a daycare center on the ground floor. Will the families who live there get to come back? Amanda asked. They'll be the first offered a place, along with job and education support. The triplets thrived at Brighton Academy. Emily became a natural leader among her group. Olivia spent hours in the library, and Ava discovered a talent for music. They're extraordinary, the principal commented. It's as if they finally found their place. Visits to the hospital became special moments. Amanda, guided by Dr. Chen, began building a new relationship with her daughters, based on understanding and conscious love. You know what Dr. Chen told me? Ava asked one day. Sometimes people do sad things because they're scared, but that doesn't mean they don't love us. Amanda felt tears in her eyes. That's true, my love, and sometimes we need help to be brave again. As spring approached, significant changes were in full bloom. The Morrison Foundation had already identified over 100 families for its pilot program. The renovated building was nearly ready. Jack observed it all with a sense of satisfaction he had never felt on Wall Street. Mr. Patches, now back with Emily but occasionally loaned out, symbolized the entire journey, worn, cherished, and still capable of offering comfort and hope. One afternoon, visiting Amanda during her physical therapy, he found her looking thoughtful. Something wrong? No, she smiled, genuinely. Just thinking that Emily was right about angels showing up when we need them. Jack felt his own emotions stir. Actually, I think it was you who showed up when I needed it most. I just didn't know it. Outside, the snow had melted, replaced by green buds promising flowers. The city, like its inhabitants, would carry scars from that night. But as Dr. Chen often said, scars are just reminders of our capacity to heal. And as he watched Amanda push herself through therapy, determined to get strong for her daughters, Jack Morrison knew he had found something no fortune could buy, a purpose larger than himself. The Morrison Foundation was only the beginning. Because sometimes, the biggest transformations start with the unlikeliest stories: a blizzard, 3 lost little girls, a teddy bear, and a man who discovered it wasn't too late to rewrite his own redemption story. New York has a short memory for most things, but some stories leave a permanent mark on the city's soul. 1 year after the worst snowstorm in decades, the Morrison Enterprises building was fully restored, its facade gleaming in the winter sun. In the renovated lobby, a discreet plaque noted the date of the accident and honored those who had helped with the rescue. Jack Morrison adjusted his tie, observing the final preparations for the evening's event. The main hall had been transformed for the celebration commemorating not just the anniversary of the accident, but the official launch of the Morrison Foundation. "Everything is ready, Mr. Morrison," Sarah confirmed, checking her list one last time. "Guests will start arriving in an hour. And Amanda, nervous but ready." "The girls are helping her get dressed," Jack smiled, thinking how much a single year could change. Amanda had fully recovered from her physical injuries, though a few scars remained visible. But it was her internal transformation that impressed him most, the newly discovered confidence, the strength that had always been there but now shone freely. The sound of children's laughter drew his attention. The triplets were coming down from the mezzanine, their new dresses swishing with every step. Emily, Olivia, and Ava, now 5 years old, radiated the joy only truly secure children can display. "Uncle Jack!" Emily ran toward him, still the natural leader among her sisters. "Mommy looks beautiful." As if on cue, Amanda appeared at the top of the stairs. The navy blue dress she wore for the occasion complemented the elegant posture of a woman no longer broken, but a professional who had found her calling. "Are you ready?" Jack asked when she joined them. "To speak in front of 500 people about the worst and best moment of my life?" Amanda smiled nervously. "Actually, I think I am." The next few hours passed in a whirlwind of activity. Guests arrived, business people, politicians, representatives of social organizations, families who'd benefited from the Foundation's pilot programs. The hall filled quickly, the buzz of conversations punctuated by soft music. When Jack took the stage for his opening speech, silence fell immediately. "A year ago," he began, "this city faced one of the worst storms in its history. But tonight, we're not here to remember the destruction. We're here to celebrate what we've built from the ruins, not just buildings, but communities, not just social programs, but genuine changes in people's lives." He paused, spotting the triplets in the front row, Emily clutching Mr. Patches. "Someone very wise once told me that angels appear when we need them most. What they didn't realize is that sometimes angels come in unexpected forms, like 3 little girls in a subway station, who taught me more about humanity in one night than I'd learned in all my years in business." Amanda was next on stage. Her voice, initially tentative, gained strength as she recounted her story. The daily struggle to survive, the desperate choice on that snowstorm night, and the path to redemption. "Many mothers like me face impossible choices every day," she said. "The difference is I got a second chance, second. And now, through the Morrison Foundation, we can offer that same chance to other families." The presentation included videos and photos of ongoing projects, renovated buildings now home to dozens of families, a community daycare enabling single mothers to work, and a scholarship program benefiting over 100 children. But the most moving moment came when the triplets went on stage. In a specially prepared video, they showed their day-to-day lives at school, at home, in after-school activities that now enriched their worlds. "Before, it was just us and Mommy," Olivia explained in the footage. "Now we have a big family, Uncle Jack, Sarah, Dr. Chen, and all the foundation friends. And Mr. Patches," Emily added, holding the well-loved teddy bear up. "Mommy smiles a lot more now," Ava concluded, her characteristic sensitivity evident. "And she's not scared anymore." After the formal event, when most guests had left, Jack found Amanda in the mansion's library, reading to the girls. It was a nightly ritual they faithfully maintained, no matter how busy the day. He stopped at the door, not wanting to interrupt the moment. Amanda sat in the large leather armchair, a triplet on each arm and the third in her lap. Her gentle voice gave life to the story, punctuated by small comments and giggles from the girls. "Uncle Jack!" Ava noticed him first. "Come listen too." "Mommy does the best voices," Olivia said proudly. Jack settled into a nearby chair, smiling as he watched the scene. Anyone seeing this family now would never guess the drama that had marked its beginning. "You know," Amanda said after the girls finally drifted off, "sometimes I still wake up in the middle of the night, panicking, thinking this is all a dream." "What convinces you otherwise?" The sound of their breathing in the next room, the feeling of having a purpose beyond survival, knowing I'm no longer alone. Jack nodded, understanding completely. "You've changed so many lives this past year, Amanda. All those families you've helped through the foundation. You changed ours first," she replied softly. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if you hadn't passed that station that night. I prefer to think some things are meant to happen. Maybe not the way we expect, but exactly the way we need." Outside, tiny snowflakes had started to fall, not nearly as threatening as the storm a year ago, just enough to gently blanket the city in white. Jack reflected on how the same snow that nearly destroyed so many lives had also, paradoxically, paved the way for their salvation. Emily stirred in her sleep, hugging Mr. Patches tighter. The teddy bear, now even more worn after a year of adventures, remained her constant companion. Jack smiled, recalling how often that simple toy had symbolized trust, hope, and love throughout this journey. "It's time to put the girls to bed," Amanda whispered, not wanting to disturb the peaceful moment. Carefully, Jack helped carry the triplets to their rooms, no longer the guest room they'd slept in that first night, but their own spaces, each decorated to reflect their distinct personalities. Olivia had shelves of books, Emily a special spot for Mr. Patches and her new plush friends, and Ava walls covered with her drawings. After Amanda finished tucking the girls in, they paused in the hallway watching the snow through the window. "A year," she murmured. "It feels like a lifetime." "In some ways, it is," Jack replied. "A new life, for all of us." And it was true. Morrison Enterprises had transformed as much as its owner, still profitable, but now with a clear focus on social responsibility. The foundation was growing rapidly, with plans to expand to other cities. And Jack Morrison, the former lone wolf of Wall Street, had discovered that success could also be measured in smiles, hugs, and small moments of shared joy. As the gentle snow continued to fall outside, Jack remembered how a single act of kindness, stopping to help 3 lost children on a stormy night, had triggered a wave of change that kept on growing. Because sometimes the biggest changes begin at the most improbable moments. And sometimes, when we help others find redemption, we end up finding our own. Snow covered New York once again with its white blanket, but this time it brought no fear or destruction. It was merely a gentle reminder that even on the darkest nights, hope is always there, and that the true miracle isn't in the storm itself, but in what we choose to build after it passes.